Hi there, everybody. My name is John Leland from combridges.com, and I'm here with Sally Sketch. No, Sally Getch. It rhymes with sketch. That's how I always remember it, Sally Getch. Also known as WPFangirl.com and many other claims to fame, and a great knowledgeable person about many things, including websites, which is our focus today. How you doing, Sally?
I'm doing pretty well, John. It's great to see you.
Yeah, it's cool. So we call this thing Website Truthtellers because it's inspired by the blog post that, at least on my screen, is up above, and a collaboration that we did a couple years ago that you've then iterated into multiple websites. And we both do WordPress websites in various ways. In fact, Monique is with us in the chat. If you would put up livinginmarin.com, just livinginmarin.com. That's a big WordPress website that I just launched about a week ago. But I've also been, as you know, migrating towards Squarespace because of the challenges that I see so many small businesses having with websites. And your headline here is, have we been misleading people about WordPress? And I know your other blog post talks about there's no such thing as, what is it, as an
intuitive interface.
As an intuitive interface. So, you know, how do you think that people are being misled about WordPress, and what's that learning curve challenge? And I think we can use that as kind of a taking off point.
Sure. Well, I was inspired to write the "Have We Been Misleading People About WordPress" post after seeing one too many ads for a WordPress, for different WordPress add-ons, plugins, or themes, or whatever, that basically says, "And you can do amazing things without knowing code," as if this somehow meant you can build a really fancy website customized in any way you might imagine without knowing anything.
Right. And no code required.
Right. Yes. And so the point that I went on to elaborate in varying stages, including a presentation at WordCamp Sacramento, was that, there are a lot of things you can do without knowing code that are actually really hard and require many years of training, like, brain surgery, rocket science, winning the Olympics. You don't have to know code to do any of those things, but they are hard to do. And the I used in this particular blog post was Adobe InDesign, which is a tool for various kinds of print layout. So you can, lay out a book or a flyer or a brochure or any of this sort of combination of text and image stuff. And I have used it once or twice, and it's really hard. It is not like you can't just like jump in there and do something. You want to jump in there and do something, use like Microsoft Publisher or Pages or whatever. But InDesign is really hard. Photoshop, beyond the most basic kind of auto adjust things, is really hard. There are enormous numbers of tutorials, hours and hours and hours worth, teaching you how to really use Photoshop. And so, just because you don't have to write code in order to do something doesn't make it easy. WordPress is software, and it requires a good deal of knowledge about how to use it and some adjustment of your expectations of what you're going to be working with. And I think that in general, we don't prepare our clients well enough to expect that it's going to be hard. And there are some places that market it as being, much easier than it really is. If you're starting from the position that a lot of small businesses are, where you maybe know how to use Word and PowerPoint and Excel, and you can just about read your email. And other than that, you don't have any background whatsoever in building websites.
Yeah, it's a complicated world. And, that's part of the reason that I've gravitated towards Squarespace, because it is definitely easier. But even within that simpler environment, a small business in general doesn't know how to approach a website project. And, I got brought into a project recently with a client that was doing a WordPress site, but they realized as a reality that just building a website also is not going to necessarily grow your business. There's a lot to internet marketing strategy, which is one of my fortes. And so it's this, for me, it's a proverbial Grand Canyon gap between people and technology. And there's always someone trying to say, well, yes, it's easy and it's much easier than it ever was before. there's some truth to that, as I think you pointed out in your blog post. But the challenge of really effectively communicating online is so much more than just even a piece of software.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's building a website, and then there's actually having a website that's going to do something for your business. And I certainly want any sites that I build for my clients to do something for their business, and that means I have to know something about their business, and they have to know something about their business and what they want to achieve with it, and how they will know if it's successful, and who they want to reach, and all of those things. So it's it's really a very large problem masquerading as I can go to Wix and half an hour later have my Yellow Pages ad equivalent of a website.
Yeah, it's really there's websites, and then there's websites. Let me do a quick piece of housekeeping, which is if you're watching this on Blab, Monique is posting some URLs, and Sally mentioned that presentation that she did in Sacramento. Why don't we put that URL up for people? And I've got a 15-minute webinar that I did about why I'm recommending Squarespace. So why don't we get both of those URLs in the chat? And if you're watching this on YouTube, I will put all those URLs into the description down below the video. So those resources can be available to anybody if you're watching on YouTube or on Blab. So yeah, I always say it's about the communication, not about the technology. And I'm curious, your view, have you worked much recently with the WordPress.com? Because I think about WordPress.com as more of a direct competitor to Squarespace.
Right. Well, they're both hosted services, and WordPress.com, I look at it very, very occasionally. They've done some things to kind of make the interface prettier. They created an app you can use from your desktop or your mobile device for adding posts and pages. And because WordPress.com does take a lot of the complexity away, but some of the complaints that I quoted in my presentation about people saying, "Oh my God, this is so hard," were left on WordPress.com. So even though it removes a lot of the sort of a lot of the harder parts, and then they've done what they can to make the basic experience of writing a post or writing a page straightforward and attractive. There are still a lot of things that confuse people, and part of this is the fact that a content management system, the reason you're using it, the reason you should be using it, is because you want to be able to enter content in one place and display it in lots of different places without having to retype all of it. And the thing is, in general, if you're working with Microsoft Word, for the 99% of people who use Microsoft Word as if it were a typewriter, and you want something where you've got like one thing here, and then you maybe have a little excerpt of it over on the side, then you would type it the one thing here, and then you type the thing on the side, and then you type the, and you anywhere you wanted to show it, you'd have to, copy and paste it or retype it or something like that. And what you have with a content management system is the content is stored in the database, and you can pull out the content or whatever part of it you want. So, the title, the featured image, the excerpt, the whole post, whatever it is, and show that, in your sidebar, in your footer, in your main content area, in a list like this, in a grid like that, without having to re-enter any of the content. But that's confusing to people because they have to wrap their heads around, okay, all of my, team bios are over here under team, and all of my client testimonials are here under testimonial. But maybe the page that displays them, on your about page, you have your about content, and then maybe you'll have your team members showing up, and then maybe you'll have some testimonials showing, but you can't edit them from the about page. And it's not that it's so difficult to master. It's that you have to understand to begin with that there is something to master, and that you'll need to practice these things. And once you get used to them, they're pretty easy. But, as Mike Little, the co-founder of WordPress, said, WordPress isn't easy to use until you learn how to use it.
Yeah, and that's true of everything. I mean, that's what people don't. And and I'm reminding myself about it all the time, because it just takes time to learn stuff. And
It does, and
and
we forget that.
and we also forget, I think, what you said before about how do you wrap your head around that? Because for me, a lot of this stuff is second nature. I'm sure it is for you too, because we're used to thinking the way that WordPress or the way a piece of software thinks. But somebody who comes in, and I've come across this where I'm teaching people how to use Squarespace, I sort of presume that I know how this language works, right? I speak the language of the software, if you will, because you need to follow the rules of the language in order to have things work. But it's not intuitive out of the box for somebody that's never done it before.
It's not. I mean, and I haven't worked with Squarespace, but it is one of those things that gets compared to WordPress as, the interface is nicer, it's prettier, it's easier, it's whatever. And, from what I've looked at in the demos, yeah, the interface is really nice for the, laying things out and adding content. And, but it's still not necessarily going to be completely obvious to.
No, it is easier. And the thing that I like about it is that there's a lot of drag and drop that you can do where you can rearrange pages on the fly, which you couldn't do in WordPress. The big thing that I'm interested in talking to you about also is maintenance, because one of the things that's become, in a way, a thorn in my side. I mean, I still do it, and you have to do it in terms of maintaining WordPress sites that are, the host, not the hosted version, but the server version where you put it on your own hosting account. I mean, for most really small businesses, certainly solopreneurs and that level of small business, I recommend a hosted system like Squarespace, because they don't want to deal with backups and possible hacking and updating plugins and all that kind of stuff. Are you seeing more gravitation, or do you just think that comes with the WordPress territory?
It is a thorn in a lot of people's sides. There's now a thriving industry of WordPress maintenance services, where you pay them anywhere from $40 to $100 a month, and they do backups, they do security scans, they update your plugins. Some of them will also do add content or minor SEO or small fixes of whatever. And I recommend those to people because it's going to cost them less for a month of that than it is to pay me for an hour. And it may not take me an hour in a month to do the updating they need, but it's annoying that there are so many updates all the time. It really is, and especially if you're not doing a lot with your site. I've come to the point where if somebody really wants the equivalence of a Yellow Pages ad, there's going to be like home, about, services, contact, and they don't plan to change that any of the content more than about once a year. It's like, yeah, go to Wix, buy your own domain name. But
Squarespace, I mean, it's like they're direct competitors. And I think, Wix, Squarespace, WordPress.com, are all hosted services. I like Squarespace because the templates are good, and I really do like the software. And there's a lot of simplification that they've built into it. One of the things you may not know about that I really enjoy is when we take a site live, particularly if the domain is registered at GoDaddy, but it's like a couple of clicks. You sign into the GoDaddy on one browser, in the same browser, in a different tab, and literally you just affirm like you would affirm Facebook, when you were signing up for some page, and boom, the DNS gets updated, and they have the script to do what needs to happen to point that domain over to Squarespace. It's
very nice,
so easy.
Yeah, it's
they've done a number of things like that. I mean, MailChimp likewise is integrated into the forms, and the whole form thing is a whole lot simpler.
Right. And, I would definitely suggest that sort of thing. I mean, I think Wix is probably cheaper for people who don't need quite as much a level of sophistication. But
we're talking about a difference of a few dollars a month there.
I don't know. I suppose it depends. There are some people who are perfectly happy using the free version with the ads on it. It's amazing.
That does amaze me.
Yeah, well, and I mean, the thing is that on WordPress.com, unless you're paying for updates, for a premium package, other people's ads are going to show up on your site too. So it's if it's a website for your business, for God's sake, be willing to invest something in it. Then it doesn't have to be a ton of money, and And the cost of your Squarespace will cover all the behind the scenes maintenance that you never see, as well as the actual hosting and so forth. And I increasingly think that, yeah, for some people, they should go somewhere else, besides to WordPress. You should use WordPress when you need a database for your content, when you need the levels of customization that you can have with a self-hosted WordPress site. When you need to be able to port your content elsewhere and own it and control it. I mean, I'm not sure what the export process is from Squarespace these days.
It's the blog posts and stuff exports, but I mean, again, in a small business like that, the export issue is relatively non-existent because you could copy and paste the content into any.
And if you have if you have a small site, copying and pasting the content is not a big deal. If you have hundreds or thousands of pages,
or need higher level functionality, like we just did the Living in Marin site that we put the URL up earlier. Excuse me, we did a whole integration of, it's a real estate site, real estate company. And we integrate the MLS, the multiple listing service, via something called IDX, which is what the web-based version for that. And it's like, that's a WordPress site. And also the other point that I wanted to get to that I think is really big is this whole issue of responsive design. Because I've seen the complexity that you can get into with WordPress. Yes, you buy, of course, a responsive theme, but as you edit and customize, and that's the big operation that I think that is definitely not for the uninitiated, to make to customize your site, you can break the responsiveness. And because of the closed system of something like Squarespace, the themes, or they call them templates, the templates are responsive, and you can't go outside of their architecture to break the responsiveness.
Right, and anything that you put into it is going to be contained within a responsive section.
Yeah, and that mobile friendliness and having a site that's truly mobile friendly is absolutely, if you don't know, I mean, you know, Sally, but for those of you watching, if you don't know, is absolutely mission critical now. It's not only going to be a huge percentage, probably, what would you say, 30 to 50% of traffic in general is mobile now?
It varies on my own sites and on my client sites, but yeah,
that's a big range. I mean, that's what I'm seeing on my sites and clients.
But yeah, it's a large
30 and 50%. I mean, it can be half of the traffic, and a third is certainly a major amount as well. And also, it helps you in the Google rankings. That if people are searching on their mobile, and how many of us don't do that, right? Is the results on mobile for a mobile-friendly site are going to be better. And that's where your business is coming from. So if that's why you're doing your website, it better be rock solid mobile friendly. And that can complicate things in WordPress for sure, right?
It can complicate things in anything. I mean, it's this is just the nature of web design. Is if you haven't thought out how you're setting up your responsiveness. And my apologies for the train. I live next to the railroad tracks.
I can't hear.
It's if you don't build that correctly, then it's going to be a mess. Things will be overflowing or illegible or just, in some way fairly obviously broken. Most of the better plugins that you get for WordPress for things like sliders and slideshows and galleries and e-commerce products and so on are designed for their output is set up to be responsive, and that works pretty well. But you have to know what to use that's going to work well for that. That's going to load relatively quickly, because any website built based on a database is going to tend to be slower than a website built on flat files, because you have all those calls back and forth to the database. There's more communication that has to go on. And that's why, if you're using WordPress, you should sign up for WordPress optimized hosting that already has server-side caching enabled to speed up the performance of your website. You don't want to put a WordPress site on a typical, GoDaddy shared hosting account, because it will run like sludge.
Yeah, so let's give them tips. Who do you like for that? I mean, there's SiteGround, What's the one that my folks in Tahoe are using?
Right. So my sites are all on SiteGround because it's a really good combination of the WordPress optimization and all the kind of standard shared hosting features. Like, you have a control panel, you can have multiple sites on one account, you can set up email, you can do those kinds of things. But we also, there are many good ones. Pagely was the first one. They're one of the sponsors of our meetup.
You mentioned your meetup as long as you're talking about that.
Right. So I've since 2009, I've been the organizer of the East Bay WordPress meetup. We meet usually the third Sunday of the month over at Tech Liminal, which is now in Port Workspaces in Oakland. That used to be the Kaiser Mall, so it's right by Lake Merritt. And I have a website for that at eastbaywp.com where we post.
Went into the chat.
Yes, Monique just posted it, where all the notes and the slides go, and you can just go to meetup.com, put your zip code in wherever you are and search for WordPress, and it will show you where the closest WordPress meetups are.
Yeah, and another one that I really like and have been impressed with in terms of the managed WordPress hosting is Flywheel. And I put in getflywheel.com.
Yes, they have a nice setup where you can build your dev site and then easily, and you don't have to pay for it while you're building it, and then you can hand it over to the client and transfer ownership, and then they start paying for the hosting.
Yeah, and they have very good backups, and they have actually some extra services as well that I found impressive. And I'm working, this real estate site is being hosted by a company called Minot Designs up in Tahoe, and they actually build further value-added services on top of the Flywheel package. So that's just, again, underscoring that WordPress is more than just like push a button and have a website. There's
absolutely, and
it's very sophisticated technology, and it's keeping people like you and me in business because we're experts and able to provide those services. Do you really think? I guess I can push back and challenge our thesis here. Are people really thinking that they can do it themselves these days, given how and I do want to add in, WordPress has made a lot of the updates more easy, made them easier.
Yeah,
their core updates are now can be automatic, and the plugin updates has become incredibly simple. But it's still not for the uninitiated.
Right, it's much easier than it was, but I encounter quite a lot of people, through the meetup and elsewhere they've decided to build their own sites with WordPress. And, you sign up for your hosting, you go and push the install WordPress button, and there you have a WordPress site. And maybe you have, 50 themes that your hosting company decided to load in there, to clutter up your space with. But in any case, you have a lot of options, and somebody with a little bit of background can build a basic blog site fairly easily. If you're not, if you want to just like install a theme out of the box and start blogging, it's not that difficult. But if you have a specific idea of what you want, getting from where you start to there gets to be much more difficult if you're not familiar with it. And then any website, you want to have backups, you want to have some kind of security, and
maintenance to update all that stuff. So
right,
so your main WordPress website is wpfangirl.com.
Yes.
Monique, you're doing a great job with all these URLs, and she also has a URL for me for the CommBridges overview of our website services, and that also includes a link to the 15-minute Squarespace webinar. But
yes, and I will happily point people to you for that now that I know you do Squarespace, because I don't have the bandwidth to learn Squarespace. So if I think somebody's going to be better served by a Squarespace site, I'm just going to pass them along.
Thank you. And one of the other things that I've done that's been an interesting experiment, which is also this kind of hybrid, the business talk is done with you. Like traditionally websites have been done for you. And I do 3-hour sessions now for $750 to teach people Squarespace, help them with the site structure, the navigation and what the main sections are, and also, choose a theme, customize the theme. We just work together so they get hands-on experience and learning, and I move the whole thing along. Welcome, Ibrahim. I'm going to open the seat, see if we get any questions. Monique, if you have a question, feel free to chime in. And Ibrahim, you just joined us, so you're catching up. I would recap that, websites, whether it's WordPress or Squarespace, are more than just a thing, and what we've talked about is that it's about communication, not about the technology. That the website, if it's going to produce real results, has to have a marketing strategy built into it. How are you going to engage with people, have a real conversation, begin, interacting with them in a way that can ultimately lead to a sale? Because in almost no instances, just because somebody comes to your website, will they buy your goods or services. They really are checking things out. You need to find an engagement, hopefully build an email list, engage them by social media. So there's just so much more that can happen, or needs to happen if the website is
there is, and for different people might visit the website at a different stage. So a lot of people say, basically, I want my website as a place people can go after they've met me in person and collected my business card to find out more about me. They're not really expecting the website to be the first encounter that they have with a person. Other people, their website is really, they concentrate very heavily on SEO and content marketing and producing information that's going to be out there and, spreading it around so that people first see them at, either on their website or something that brings them back to the website, and then pull them into, subscribing to an email list or something else. And it is kind of like, yeah, okay, so what are your goals for your business? How can your website support those goals? What do you want your website to accomplish for you? And it might be multiple things. If lead generation is something that you're working on, you might on some pages have a sign up for my email list and get this free, download. You might directly have, you might have a form for people to inquire more directly about your services. You might have things people can actually purchase. You might be using your website to help establish your credibility by putting up a portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can refer people back to that, when they want to see what you've done. Here's the link to my portfolio. They can go see it and, read about the projects.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I see all the time with strategy. And I think it's maybe, ties in very directly to what we're saying about websites, which is that it's not for the uninitiated, and it requires some real, not only rigorous thinking about how is this really going to happen, because just offering a free PDF to sign up for your email newsletter, is not a marketing plan. Let's put it that way. And the other thing is that, thinking through that strategy. In fact, this is my most recent blog post on my website. I guess you go to combridges.com/blog, and it's the most recent post, depending on when you're watching this, because it will be on YouTube replay. But it is about the fact that strategy really goes deeper and is like a practice. I mean, you have to think about how you're going to approach it, then you have to actually practice it, particularly in terms of blogging and social media, and then evolve it so that it becomes part of a real business practice. And that's a commitment to an ongoing process that a lot of businesses don't, just do the SEO and we're done. It's like,
oh yeah, I had somebody, they wanted me to build basically a 5-page website, and I probably shouldn't have done it in WordPress, because it was the sort of thing that you put up and then you let it sit there.
I call those brochure websites.
Exactly. And but they're like, and we want you to SEO it. I'm like, you have about 500 words of content on your entire website. What do you expect to be able to optimize?
Exactly. And so much of it is also of SEO is these days in particular is link building and getting attention and references from the outside, because that's how Google knows that your site is important. So even if they had more words and they optimize those words, that doesn't mean you're going to show up. Obviously, it depends on what kind of keywords you're looking for.
Right. I think they could have done very well for themselves blogging, and then, sharing that out and, having people come in to see it. But, as with many of these companies, there was nobody there who had the time to devote to actually, writing content about the work, the kind of work that they do that would help establish them as experts, and have people remember them the next time they need a whatever.
Yeah, it's not only a commitment to a process. To be involved in that process requires resources. And that's where the solopreneur gets trapped, because they have to do everything. And I'm only one level up from a solopreneur, I guess, so it's like it's a balancing act to get that stuff done. But it's a practice. And so that takes a lot of energy. So we're open to questions. You can type that, you have that little slash mark if you're on Blab. So you can type Command Q, or rather /Q, not Command Q. And make a question that way, or the seat is open if you want to interact with us by video. Welcome to the people, Linda and Ibrahim. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and the other people that have joined us. What can we help you with? What are your questions about websites? Where have you gotten stuck? What are you learning? How can we help? You got two really great. I'm telling you, me and Sally both are bona fide website experts. We live and breathe it and do it every day, and we're here to help.
I dream about WordPress. It's frightening.
Yeah. So what questions do you have? We've been blabbing here for a little over about a half an hour, I guess, from when we started. But what else haven't we covered that people should know about the realities of what it takes to do a WordPress or just a website these days?
Right. I think that, yeah, I think it's part of the realities of what people need to think about if they're going to have a business. They know that you need to spend time on marketing. And if you are a solopreneur, you cannot do everything. You cannot be super active on every single social network and in person and like speaking. And this, you have to pick a few things, pick a one or two social networks that you really feel like you can interact in, and that are, by preference, the place where your clients are. And then you have to, then you have to think about, so you're going to have to market your business. And, as time goes on, you will probably start to get more referrals and not have to do so much active marketing. But you need to think, okay, if I want people to sign up for my email newsletter, that means I have to write one. And send them something. And then I have to think about, not only am I going to write an article, but am I going to include something in it that helps encourage them to either use my services or refer other people to use my services.
Right.
If I'm going to be doing in-person networking, what am I going to be doing? Things that, I care a lot about owning my own content, which is why I've tended for my own stuff to shy away from hosted services. But in other cases, Monique asked, should I convert my website from WordPress if I rarely update it and it's about 15 pages? I'd say that might be a good candidate for putting on Squarespace, depending on the website, especially if you tend to get behind on your updates and that kind of thing.
Yeah, you get.
This is my cat, BC. Yes, never act in the presence of children and animals. But I can't keep her out when I'm on a call, because she'll just assault the door.
She's welcome anytime. But
yes.
Yeah, no, I think Monique's question is good in terms of, part of it is, what are you paying for hosting, and the second part is what Sally said before. Both the conversation about, what are your goals? Like, what do you really want to accomplish? So you're spending about $120 a year. Is that what you said for the hosting? So you're paying about $10 a month. And she confirmed that. So, that's certainly within the cost range. If you're keeping it up to date and it's secure, $10 a month is reasonable. That's probably, I'm going to guess, is GoDaddy hosting or something like that. Because that sounds like what we're calling a brochure website. So it's Host Monster, but it's a brochure website, Monique. And I don't know, is it serving your business? Are you getting leads off of that website? Is it playing any role with no? So
right. So if it's not serving your business, then you probably don't simply want to transfer it. You want to actually overhaul it. and create a website that is serving that can serve your business, whether you choose to use, WordPress or Squarespace or Wix, or, have somebody write you 3 pages in HTML.
So she says now, Monique, I don't know if you want to come on video, but we can have this as a conversation if you want. But responding to her next comment, she said, who has time? And, and that is the classic conundrum. I mean, it is, I think probably the biggest complaint that I hear, and here comes Monique, is that people are overwhelmed. And people are overwhelmed because they're small businesses. Hi, Monique. And they have so much to do. And learning about social media and learning about what does it take to do a website, is that your situation, Monique? It's like you're saying, who has time? Is it overwhelming to have a more powerful website and a more powerful web presence?
All of marketing is overwhelming. It's just, which
Right.
one do I
So
do
do you want to
first?
give us do you want to give us the link to your current website, and we'll have a look at it here, and you can tell us a few of your pain
that
points?
when she asked the question.
It's MoniqueMartineau.com. It's right up there with the question. I can put it in again.
I can even tag it for people.
There, I've typed it in. So
it's embarrassing. It's so simple. I mean, the picture on it is ancient and everything is just, but at least it gives a feel for who I am, is all. I'm like, well, because I'm a mindfulness coach, so it's really not about my presence. If I was a web developer like you all, I better have a good page.
Right. Well, one thing is that it's not mobile friendly.
Oh.
Which is definitely a problem.
So that underscores Sally's initial recommendation that you probably do need a new website and an overhaul, which then gets into a budget issue and a time issue. Once we're coming back around to the resources question, right?
Yeah.
Right. Now, depending on how customized it is, you might be able to basically just switch themes and put a new photo in.
Easier said than done. Here we are.
Yes. I mean, this is the thing that, like, in theory, right? In theory, part of the reason that you're using a content management system is so that
one of my mantras is that I developed a long time ago when I was doing a video about the emergence of digital video, is that it's always more complicated than you think it is. And
almost everything is.
Words, all we have to do is switch the theme and put in a new photo.
No. Right. And I mean, this might or might not be true. It's the idea is supposed to be, you're using WordPress partly so that your content is over here in the database, your design is over here in the theme, and your function is handled by your plugins. Now, one thing that's often a problem is that people will buy themes that have a lot of function in them that should be handled by plugins. And then if they try to change themes, things break massively. And their slider disappears.
Which for me is an argument for Squarespace, because you don't have to negotiate that.
Right.
Built-in functionality and their themes, which are designed to be mobile.
Right. And WordPress.com does that to a point. It's like, well, here are the plugin-like functions you are allowed to use on WordPress.com, and that's it. And we guarantee that the ones that you're available will work with any theme that you're allowed to use on WordPress.com.
Right.
And it's a pretty limited thing, because nobody has enough resources to test 40,000 plugins against, however many thousand themes and make sure that they all play well together. Okay. But so the theory is, you might need to redrag your widgets or do a few things, and it will be simple. The practice is sometimes much more complicated, which is part of why we like to back things up before we make any changes. Right. And I noticed that you are blogging, or you have been blogging at some point. I don't know how frequently you do that.
I go through phases.
Yes. Well, I know how it is.
Do you, Sally, also, just to tell the truth about this? Go through phases about blogging and not blogging?
It's so tough to find the time to do. Those pesky clients. Not to mention that the pesky husbands need to be driven to the airport 3 or 4 times a month.
Living a life. We all live lives too.
Right. So you have family responsibilities or household responsibilities or something. Everybody's got some kind of responsibilities outside of their work, on top of, doing the billable work. And
plus you got to make sure you look good. Like, I'm just dying to get my hair down, so I don't look good. I mean, that all takes time.
Well, it does. I had my hair done on Monday. It takes 2.5 hours to do my hair.
I just heard Amanda Palmer talking about how she doesn't do her hair just because she's not willing to sit in a chair for 2 hours before she performs. But
Well,
I want to take another slant on your question, Monique, because it's a great question. And again, I see small businesses with these kind of challenges all the time. And I think that taking one step back is the basics of a business plan. And you're a business consultant. I know you're a very savvy businesswoman. But it's a little bit probably the shoemaker's children don't have shoes, is that thinking through, okay, my goal in the business is this. I'm going to invest this much in marketing, which includes the website, in order to really create the avenues for the core services that I want this website to be about. Because I know you enough to know that you are a wellness coach and you're a speaker and you have other services you provide. And it's sort of like, that's also not uncommon that we see small businesses that try and do 5 things at once on their website. So doing a business plan can help you focus on what do you really want the business to accomplish and what's an appropriate investment given the return that you expect to get out of it.
Right. I mean, your business website should help you make money. You should not invest more in your website than you expect to be able to get out of it within a reasonable period of time. So, you sometimes look at projects and as a developer, you think, oh yeah, we could do like this and this and this, and that would be really amazing. And that the client doesn't have the budget for it, and it's not going to be coming back to them given the nature of the of the business or of the site. And so you have to then make decisions, right? What has the highest priority,
right,
and is going to provide the best results versus, what would it be really cool to do?
And I'll throw in another possible angle, which is other ways to do a website. I mean, particularly if resources are really tight. Medium, for example, is a wonderful platform, particularly for blogging and writing and for engaging people with intelligent ideas. And you can do a website on Medium and point the URL over there and use it for authoring. It's not the designy kind of like creative website.
It's a great platform for writing. It's a terrible platform for branding.
But Monique is really about her voice.
Right, but
anyway.
Right. If what you want is
an audience, it's a way to do a website with a minimum of cost. Likewise, some people, and I don't ascribe to this, and I'm interested in your point of view, say I'm just going to have a Facebook page, right? And so you're opposed to that. That's no way. But that is another option. Instead of having a website, you have a Facebook page, and this is where to find out information about me.
Right. Leaving your entire business dependent on what Facebook decides to do with its algorithm next, it seems pretty dangerous. Plus, again, there's the issue of, how do you get your content out of?
Yeah. So the content can always be recreated in some level, particularly if you're going back to a basic website. And again, I'm not recommending it from a marketing point of view, but if somebody doesn't want to spend the time to redesign a website, then you have an opportunity to say, okay, my Facebook page is my website. And that's where I point people, because really it's just a brochure, right? We're not really building the true interactive. We're not building the branding design. We're just going to we want a web presence. We need to have somewhere to point people to get more information about us. And
I probably get more activity on Facebook than on my website.
Right, and that right.
Or
if
LinkedIn.
That's
what about LinkedIn?
LinkedIn is another great place, because you've got your profile with all kinds of information about you, contact information and history and so on. And it's become a pretty good publishing platform. So it's partly where are the people you're trying to reach hanging out. So many people have had extremely good luck with LinkedIn, but other people, they have better luck with Facebook, better luck with Twitter, better luck with, depending on where they are. Some people do really well out of Instagram and Snapchat.
Right.
But
that's right.
It's partly who are you trying to reach? It's partly who are you as a person, and where is it that you feel comfortable expressing yourself? And if you basically want a web page that has a short description and then links to your social profiles, you can go to about.me and set something up there, which is basically kind of a little single page mini bio.
My version of what you're saying there, Sally, is it depends on what you have to say, right? I mean, Medium is interesting if you want to blog and you have things to say. You know, the other end of it on LinkedIn is that's if you just have a resume and you're looking for a job, that's what LinkedIn is specializing in, is publishing people's kind of resume and who they are. So that's a different kind of, that's a different kind of presence, a different kind of communication. Is I'm looking for a job and here's my resume. My point is that moving towards the brochure website, we're not talking about small businesses now that really need to brand themselves. We're really talking about individuals who need to have a presence. And so a full-on website might not be the right thing.
Right. One thing that could be good about LinkedIn for you as a speaker is that they own SlideShare. So if you have slides that you use with presentations, you can include those in your LinkedIn profile.
SlideShare is a great tool, by the way. I love.
Right, and there's people do actually a lot of sort of business research and stuff on SlideShare, and you can adapt the slides. I normally, when I'm creating slides to present with, the slides are images with 1 or 2 words, but you can add notes to them before you upload them, so that they then have more value for people who are not there seeing you actually present. Some people may be most active on their YouTube channel because they're producing videos. And I noticed you have a couple of videos on your website. And one of the nice things about a WordPress site, and for all I know, a Squarespace site, John can answer that, is you can embed the SlideShare presentations and the speaker deck presentations and the YouTube videos just by pasting the link into your post or your page, and then you can include a lot of different types of media.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm pulling up the URL from. I think SlideShare is great for business, and I'm putting in the URL now of the SlideShare that I did about my the slides from my Squarespace webinar, and that's just it's a great way to communicate visually, and Monique, maybe you would do better. Combination of Facebook, really work your profile there, and your business page, and also LinkedIn for your communications, and your YouTube channel, because you are starting to do videos, and I think that's great.
Okay. I wish, does anyone else want to speak up? This is great to have this free consulting right now.
We're coming up on the hour, but we're open to questions, and I'm not sure still who's hanging out with us. I think it might be just us chickens here at the end.
Might be just us at this point, yeah. And the sort of figuring out what you need to do part is really, like, finding time for strategy as a one-person business is very challenging. And it's partly there's this just deep internal resistance to, oh my God, I cannot take that much time away from my client work. But to sort of say, okay, look, today's a national holiday. I'm going to take this as my strategy day.
Yeah, I do
sit down and reevaluate. All right, here are the different things I do. Which are the ones I'm really doing right now, and that I really, my heart is really in those things, and and great clients come to me for that, and I'd like more clients like that, and who are those, and just sort of sit down and say, I want to emphasize this and de-emphasize that, and you may come up with instead of a plan for a site that has 5 services, a plan for a site that has 2. And then you're looking at creating sort of fewer pages and a maybe a blog, and then you take that and say, okay, how much time would it take to set that up on Squarespace, say, or on whatever, maybe you decide you want one HTML page with your basic contact info and a link to Facebook and whatever, and you can find somebody to code that for you probably in an hour, and put it on your host monster, and leave it there and say, okay, well, if I'm going to write really long form stuff, I'm going to use something like Medium, and I can republish that to Facebook Notes or to LinkedIn's, I can't remember what they call it, but anybody can publish posts like the influencers do on LinkedIn, and I republish some of my blog posts there. yeah, the LinkedIn articles, and you know, and maybe I'm going to spend a little bit of time on Twitter, or on maybe I'm pretty good at creating sort of short, catchy messages that I can fit on a square, and post those to Instagram, and get people to share them out. But kind of I think first, if you can sort of stop and take time to say, okay, what do I really want to do more of? What do I want to do less of? Where, and what follows from that as the places I should be investing my time, because we can't do it all. It's very hard to keep up with anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the old axiom of what is it? A lack of planning, a plan to fail. Oh, failing to plan is a plan.
If you fail to plan, and
failure
plan
to plan is a plan to fail, and it's like, I don't think you can afford not to do that kind of stuff. And I know that I agree with you, Sally. It's like people resist it. I resist it. I've worked on a business plan myself recently, and I found it really satisfying and really helps me to focus on where I want to go and what I really want to do. And anyway, I don't think that there's any getting around, even though people don't want to do it, that it's a really wonderful thing to do. So we've kind of covered the spectrum here, from what does it take to do a real WordPress website and some of the lower cost, simpler systems like Squarespace, all the way down to Medium, Facebook, LinkedIn, that can still provide a web presence without the complications and without learning new software. Still, there's a learning curve to do LinkedIn well, or to do Facebook well. Right.
If you want to do it well, you still have to put time into it. And although, pretty much everybody is on Facebook and knows how to use it, and therefore,
no, there are definitely simple ways to do that. And that is an advantage of a Facebook page, is you have Facebook advertising built in, which is a more direct way to get traffic to come right to your page, and make specific offers, or do the kind of lead capture we were talking about earlier. All of that is built into Facebook. And is affordable and can be very well targeted. That I've been doing more and more Facebook advertising, and I actually enjoy it, and I find it quite effective. So anyway, those are options. Did we answer your question, Monique? Monique, you still there? Oh, all right. Well, I'll kick her out then. Thanks for the question, though, Monique. Your video locked up. You're not moving and you're not talking. So anyway, Sally, this has been great. I think it's about time. We're coming up on the hour, and Monique says she wasn't frozen to her. Well, probably as a human being you didn't freeze, but as a video frame you froze.
Oh, probably not. Anyway, to her, maybe.
It's always fun to be with you, and you have such great expertise. I guess we should say one more time, wpfangirl.com. And then your East Bay WordPress meetup is again?
That's right.
Okay. And Monique's doing such a great job with the URLs.
EastBayWP.com.
And I'm at combridges.com. That's my main website, and combridges.com/blog. And you'll see the website services listed on the menu there. And I'm on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram at John Combridges. I guess I'm Jay Leland at Jay Leland on Instagram, but at John Combridges is my Twitter handle as well. And I'd love any questions anybody has, any comments. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, the URLs we've been talking about are down in the comments section. Obviously, I don't know, I guess Blab and the replay leaves up a lot of the URLs. So hopefully you'll be able to get the resources you need, or just hit us up on one of the social medias. They're on the interwebs, and we're happy to interact. We're real people, and we answer real questions, and happy to hear from you. So thanks for watching. Thanks, Sally, again for being here. Thanks, Monique, for all the support and for your great questions and being such a great case study in your own right. All right. Take care.
All right. Thank you both. It's been great.